Welcome everyone. This is Sheila from my phone because my home internet just crashed, but I'm still here. Good to see so many of you. We're going to jump right in with questions. The first one is a pretty simple one, but a pretty important one, and that is, what is separation anxiety? And talking about distinguishing separation anxiety from separation-related behaviors.
Thanks. And thanks again for you guys for having me. So I wanted to distill my answers down to be a bit brief, because I know we've got a lot to talk about today. But I would like to say that separation anxiety is akin to a panic attack in humans, okay? It doesn't typically seem rational to us, but there are a lot of irrational human fears, right? So people that are like, I'm afraid to fly on a plane, but I happily commute, 7 hours a day, or I'm afraid of spiders, but I'm happy to, handle snakes or something, right? Or dogs, for that matter, dogs that have sharp teeth and can bite. And so, there are a lot of irrational fears out there. And when I say irrational, it feels irrational to us, but it is not irrational to the individual that is experiencing it. And so these dogs are experiencing extreme anxiety about being left alone. Now, there's a couple of classifications, and I don't want to get too detailed into it, but separation anxiety tends to be sort of an umbrella term that we use for dogs that are experiencing alone time distress or anxiety. Now, when we're asking about separation related behaviors, typically those are issues that we're looking at that are related to other items, like potentially frustration or boredom, or even reactivity because there's environmental stimuli outside the window, okay? And we'll even talk about those, but I think that true separation anxiety or isolation distress is about the dog not being able to handle separation from people, okay? So there's very few dogs that are suddenly appeased by the presence of another animal. Some are. I'm not going to say that there are none, but some are. But most of them need the presence of a human being. And so another dog or another cat is not going to do the trick. And separation anxiety or isolation distress is really something that is in and of its nature needs to be addressed. It's not something that we can say, he'll get over it, or we'll give him a Kong and he'll be fine. And, knock on wood, Kong is the best thing in the universe, not dishing Kong here. But so I want you to know that. So hopefully that's a good start for our conversation, and we can maybe go into the next question.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a great start. So next question. So if I'm fostering a dog, I'm worried that my dog might have separation anxiety. How do I know if he or she has separation anxiety?
So I love this. So, this group is particularly speaking about fosters, even though I suspect there's probably others that are in the group, but fosters and sheltering and rescue. And when we have a foster that is exhibiting some sort of signs of potential separation anxiety issues, I think it's important that we do an assessment. And an assessment is going to include using a camera. And just like we're using Zoom right now, you can use Zoom for watching that dog. Okay. And there's a couple caveats about that. We don't want to start to assess the dog the very first or second or even third day that they're in their foster environment. They need time to decompress. And most of these dogs are coming from shelter and rescue. And we want them to sort of come down from that elevated adrenaline and cortisol, et cetera, that's going on. So we want to give them a metaphorical soft place to land, right? So, giving them a couple of days or, or more, I think is really important. But after that time, I think it's really important that we have to assess. And one of the things that I find paramount in the shelter and rescue environment is that we get proper diagnostics, okay? Because a false positive or a false negative, so a dog that we think has separation anxiety and doesn't, or a dog that doesn't have separation anxiety, we think doesn't have separation anxiety but does, can be really detrimental in the shelter environment and rescue environment. And so I want you to know that we have to assess these dogs while in the foster environment to make sure that we see that they do or do not display some sort of anxiety when left alone. And I will say this is very unique because most, if not all of you, are used to us saying, we don't need to see the behavior, right? If you've got a reactive dog, you're not going to say, let's go out and see what happens when he's reactive, right? But in separation anxiety type behaviors, we need to know if, particularly in shelter and rescue and the foster environment, we need to know if the dog is displaying some sort of concern. We don't need to watch it for very long. As a matter of fact, a couple of minutes is probably, perfectly sufficient. But we do want to make sure that the dog is either displaying or not displaying concerning behaviors. Because as you know, in the shelter and rescue environment, if you label a dog as having separation anxiety issues, their adoptability is going to be challenging. If you don't label a dog that has separation anxiety issues, that does have separation anxiety issues, if you don't say there's some issues and concerns here, that's going to probably cause a lot of bounce back for that dog. So for the foster environment, using something like Zoom, and there's many cameras and other platforms, and we won't go into the technology because you've got Zoom that works. But to watch the dog for just a handful of moments or a few minutes or more to see what the behaviors indicate. And sometimes it won't be so overt. The three sort of, what is it? Cerebus, the three-headed dog, right? The three ones that we always talk about are vocalization, destruction, and elimination. But you may see a dog pacing, panting, drooling, or just showing general, low vocalized whining, and that's still of a concern from a welfare issue, and we want to make sure we address that.
Great, thank you so much. That's a really important question to me, and I love how you answered it, because I just see so many dogs get labeled with separation anxiety without an actual assessment of based on one experience in one home where no video was obtained. And like you said, that can have repercussions for long afterwards. So getting that diagnosis and knowing that it really is just so important. So
It
thank
is,
you.
because I think it's really helpful for people to ask very pointed questions when, upon surrender, because that is the most information that we're probably going to get, and if a dog comes in and they say, I've got to surrender my dog because he's barking a lot, that is not separation anxiety in many cases, and we need to dig deeper.
All right. So next question is about related to working from home. With so many of us working from home and spending all of our time with our dogs and our foster dogs, which is so nice and so much fun. Yes. But a lot of us have worries about whether that's going to cause the dog to have or put the dog at higher risk of having separation anxiety when we go back to work. And if it does, is there anything we should be doing to prevent it?
So I hope you don't mind that I'm going to tell you something about the word prevention that I worry about. So I was trying to upload this document, but I'll do it at the end when I'm not trying to talk at the same time. But the word prevention, while I love it, concerns me a little bit, because we actually, based on research and even my own experience, we have yet, and by the way, this is the number one researched behavior issue in the last more than decade, practically 20 or 30 years, over aggression. And so we've got a lot of research on it. And I read this research diligently, and I love all of it. But we don't know the actual cause. I mean, the etiology, the what is truly inspiring this disorder has yet to be completely determined. And if we don't know exactly what causes it, we can't exactly prevent it, right? We can prevent forest fires because we know what causes forest fires. Well, we cannot prevent in exactly that word, separation anxiety, if we don't know exactly what causes it. So my biggest concern about using that word is that oftentimes people say, well, I was told to do these, 5 steps or these 10 steps or whatever to prevent separation anxiety. And my dog now has separation anxiety or has some issue about being left alone. And so the word prevention to me implies a little bit of owner blaming in a backwards way, right? So I think we can really optimize dogs for alone time success. And I truly believe that. But we don't, because we don't know the cause. There are times that we can do everything. We can do everything that we know of right now with our limited knowledge, and we won't necessarily be able to prevent it. And that's not doom and gloom, by the way, because there's really great and positive ways to work with separation anxiety. But I want you to know that prevention is a bit of a strong word. So Sheila, I hope that makes sense with you, that I express that before I keep going.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. So while we're all in shelter in place moments and, having this time where we're kind of loving spending time with our dogs, but I also think that this is a great time for the two different categories, the dogs that are either predispositioned or have some concerns about separation anxiety, and the dogs that don't and never have. You leave them to go to work every day for 4 hours, at a stretch before the dog walker comes in, I think that is really, really important to know that those are two different classifications. And the dogs that are being left alone regularly without any concern, I think that we can continue to support them, and fairly easily. I think that we could um, do things like, go for a walk and take out the recycling and go get the mail, and, do just regular everyday things that will help maintain their understanding that mom or dad or whomever is leaving on a regular basis. And I want you to know that if you're leaving your dog normally before this COVID-19 situation for, 4 hours a day or something or more, don't feel that you have to go sit in your car for 4 hours every day. It's that is actually not necessary. We can still maintain and sort of keep the wheels greased by leaving on a regular basis. And when I mean regular basis, a time or two a day for 15, 30 minutes or more. Go sit in your car and read a book. It's actually a nice pastime to do. But for those dogs that have a predisposition or have already been experiencing separation anxiety, this is actually a time that is probably unprecedented forever, that we could start to work on that issue, and go out the door for a handful of seconds or a handful of minutes, depending on what the dog can handle, and start to increase very gradually, incrementally, and with great care about what the dog is able to handle. So that by the time we are all returning to work, they are significantly improved in their issue.
Great. Thank you. I think I'm going to open things up to questions. If you don't have a question, that's okay, because I'm so excited to have Malena here. I don't know if you told everyone, Malena, but we first met each other over 20 years ago, and I haven't seen you in probably about 20 years.
I know.
And I don't think there's anyone in the world who works with as many separation anxiety dogs as you do. So I could probably be asking you questions for 2 days, but I'm going to start with the first one that was sent in advance, and from Abby Knutson in Columbia, Missouri. And she wants to know, do you have an amazing and thorough document and or website resources that could be provided to a foster or adoptive parent to address questions and coping with separation anxiety?
Okay, I love this question, and I'm so grateful that you asked. And it's Abby, right? Is that her name?
Yes, Abby.
Yeah, Abby. I hope you're here, and thank you for being here. So I want to start out with the free and attainable resources. On my website, there are tons and tons of blogs. And most of them, are about 1,000 words, and so they're pretty easily digestible. And they each deal with individual topics within separation anxiety, right? So like, why might you use or not use a confinement area, that kind of thing, right? So there's a lot of topics that are there. But I'm going to, oh, thank you, Kelly. I'm going to actually put in the chat box one particular blog that is kind of a catch-all. And feel free, you guys, to use this, send it out, do whatever you want to do with it. It's all yours. But I within all of those blogs that Kelly just mentioned the website for, there's tons of them that have to do with every aspect of separation anxiety. I do want to say, though, that I do also have a paid program that I developed specifically for everybody, whether it's a foster, volunteer, a dog, dog guardian, a trainer, or whatever. It's a $99 program, and it goes through the whole process of going through separation anxiety training. And I'm happy to, by the way, for everybody that's here or everybody that listens to this, if you are in shelter and rescue, I'm happy to create a discount code for your shelter or rescue. And so let me know if you need that. Just contact me through my website. But there is an online course. It's a self-paced online course that is lifetime access, and that would be for people that have adopted dogs from your shelter or rescue, or if you're a foster, or I mean, there's so many venues that you could use that. And I'm again, I'm happy to create a discount code for your shelter or rescue. So just get in touch with me. But lastly, I really want you to know that if you personally have a Setbanks dog, or if you are a foster, or if you know a new adopter, one of the things that we do that I will forever do is when people contact us through our website, we offer a 30-minute free discussion to talk to them about what's going on with their dog, or what's going on with their foster, or what's going on with their, et cetera. And that will always be available to you. So feel free to reach out on that. But I think the blogs are a really good resource. So, take advantage of those.
Great, thank you. And I think we'll take a question from the audience. It looks like, Stephanie, you have a question. I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question.
Hi. So I have a foster right now from Franklin County Humane Society in Rocky Mount, Virginia, which you shouted out at the beginning. And I've got 3 dogs of my own who, 2 of my dogs are crated when we're not home, 1 is not. And none of them have separation anxiety, no problem. My question is, our foster that we have now has severe separation anxiety, and it's kind of my first foster that we've had this issue with. Could it in the future be detrimental to my dogs when because we do have a camera set up, and we are trying to put him in a soft crate rather than the metal crate for little bouts of times. The COVID-19 has kind of thrown a wrench in it, but to watch him on the camera, he is very anxious and barking and pacing and trying to get out the entire time you're gone, whether it's 15 minutes or an hour. And I wonder if it is better to put him in a separate room from my dogs, and if you think that the long-term effects of the stress are detrimental to mine.
It's such a good question, and I'm so glad you asked, Stephanie. So I think the first way that I'd like to answer this is say, we've got an opportunity right now with our COVID-19 situation that you could spend a little time desensitizing this dog while potentially not in a crate, because it sounds like that was not an ideal situation for this dog. But with your other dogs in whatever environment that they normally are in. So if they are in crates, or if they're in a different room or whatever, that's fine. But if you can go through a little bit of a desensitization process and start getting him, how long, Stephanie? You can either type it in the chat box or you can answer. I don't know if your mic is still on. How long has this foster dog been in your care?
A month.
Oh, it's already been a month. Sorry, you may have already said that. Okay, so, and how often have you had to leave him?
We haven't.
That's actually great.
I left him early on, like for a nail appointment, which was like 1 hour, and I checked the camera the entire time, and then maybe one other time for like 15 minutes, and then that's right when this hit and I was furloughed from work. So
Yeah.
my husband and I have literally not let, I mean, if we go somewhere, he goes in the car with us, which I feel like we're setting him up for, not.
You're not.
Failure.
You're not.
Okay.
And I want you to hear, did you hear me say?
Okay.
You're not. Okay. Here's the reason. Many people really feel that, in order to set the dog up for success, we have to leave them at least a little, right? But if we can, the goal is to teach the dog that alone time is safe. Okay. And so if we can start with, something as unfortunate as this COVID-19 situation and say, I'm going to walk out to the mailbox for 10 seconds and come back, or for however long that you feel he's able to handle. And we can do some repetition of that gradually and incrementally. We can start to get him. What's his name?
Murphy.
Okay. We can start to get Murphy to understand that, I can handle 5 or 10 seconds. I may not be able to handle the hour manicure appointment, but I can handle 5 or 10 seconds. And then that 5 or 10 seconds incrementally starts to become 30 seconds and 3 minutes and 10 minutes and 15 and so forth, and it is a little bit of a process, and there does have to be careful evaluation, but you already have a camera, and you can watch and you can say, I know what he can handle and what he can't, and so you can stay within those parameters.
Okay.
I also want to make a nod to the fact that many people here, including yourself, Stephanie, are, fostering and caring for animals that, this is an unprecedented situation. And I really want to thank everybody that is doing that. It's a tremendous effort that people have been doing. And I'm so grateful that people have signed on and jumped in for that. But the last thing I want to mention to that is, if Murphy or any other dog that is in the care of anyone here has separation anxiety, it's not only going to impact your life, sort of like you, Stephanie, and your partner, but anybody's life that is the foster. The goal is not necessarily to fix the separation anxiety. We can't exactly fix it in foster care and then say, here's your perfect dog, I'm handing him off to you, right? Sheila, I think you would agree, dogs don't generalize well. For sure. And so I feel like, if we were to get, Murphy or any dog up to, an hour or more, that doesn't mean that once he lands in his new adoptive home that he's going to be like, I've got an hour, I'm good. That's probably not likely going to happen. And I think the transparency of our fosters and rescues about saying, this is a special needs dog, no different than, and I know Sheila's really familiar with this, no different than when you say, we've got a 2-legged, one-eyed dog that has, is Cushing's positive, and how many people line up at the door for that dog, right? They're like, I want to take on that dog. I love that. And I think sometimes it's the same with separation anxiety, that we just need to, I hate the word market, but I don't know what else to say in that respect, is that, like, we need to, sort of market or advertise that dog as being like, we need that special person. And we find them. We do find them.
Thank you. That's super helpful. And the next question is going to come from Hillary, and I'm going to unmute Hillary. And I'm specifically having Hillary ask now because you were talking about finding a home for that 2-legged cushianoid. Hillary will have them lining outside the door to adopt that dog. She's incredible. But She does have a question for you about separation anxiety. So go ahead and ask, Hillary.
Hi, how are you? And I'm not as amazing as Sheila makes me out to be, but I am interested in a couple of animals that we're working with who don't show obviously separation anxiety in the shelter, but have very severe issues in home and become challenging because they're protesting the crate. But they absolutely are way too destructive to leave home alone without being crated. In fact, need indestructible crates. So we have one dog in particular that has done such damage in the home, and we're able to get her into a crate it's been a max of maybe 4 hours, but cannot get her out and to go back in on the same day. And she's so wise to it that if she knows that you're leaving, she goes into full body tremors and hides in a corner. And the level of fear and anxiety is so intense that I always have concerns about dogs who show any kind of protest behavior, but for their own safety have to be crated. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on how to work through that, because it's been exceedingly so difficult to place this particular little creature that we're just kind of out of solutions or thoughts. I'm desperate. What do you think?
I know you're desperate, and I, gosh, I can't applaud you enough for everything that you do with all of the dogs, not just the separation anxiety ones, obviously. So the dreaded word marketing that I just mentioned, I just wish I had a better word, but so a dog that is extraordinarily destructive and potentially harming themselves even in a crate is really they make my heart tick-tock. I'm not gonna lie. Because what we find is if we can find the correct environment for that dog, we can desensitize them gradually and incrementally and very carefully while outside of the crate, while not creating damage in the home. Okay. And the reason that we can do that is that we say, okay, we're going to look at the dog and we're going to say, okay, this dog can handle, I'm going to just pick a random number, 30 seconds alone in the house without doing anything upsetting or without being anxious. They can handle 30 seconds. And that sounds like nothing to you and to most people. But if we can start there, we can increase that amount of time incrementally over the course of, a couple of weeks or more, without having them be subjected to being in a confinement anxiety situation where it might be exacerbating the problem. And the destruction won't happen. So I want you to think about it this way. If we say to the dog, I'm going to metaphorically shake your paw and I'm going to create a contract with you, okay? And I'm going to say, I'm never going to leave you alone for longer than you can handle. Now, great news. That dog is metaphorically also giving me their piece of the contract back. Well, if I can handle it, I won't destroy the house. I won't bark. I won't vocalize. I won't poop. I won't pee. I won't do anything concerning while you're gone because I'm not stressed. I'm not anxious. I'm not distressed. I'm not worried. And so when we can create that contract with the dog, we're not worried about that destruction. However, that means we have to find the right village of people. And I do mean village, okay? So and this dog, what's this dog's name?
Tutu. And I did build a village for her. And so I got her, I got someone to lend me her apartment, and we had different people float in and out, and I got her to do sleepovers, and we brought an indestructible crate to the apartment to facilitate she'll go into a crate at the shelter because she knows there's treats in there, but she can break out of almost anything. So it has to be the indestructible crate. But what started to happen was we would build up those increments and her threshold, but the second she realized it was time, it became, we were able to get her in there, and she would stay in there for several hours, but when the host came home for lunch to let her out, she could never get her back in. So I understand, I mean, believe me, the marketing, I'm right there with you, and we can do that. I was more interested in sort of that translation of preventing that kind of fractious protestation with some dogs. Some can be far worse than others, and preventing them from having that level of fear that they're going to have to do something that they don't seem to feel they can manage.
And I almost
need a bigger village, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes we do need a bigger village, and I will tell you this. And before I was about to say, I wanna like throw this over to Sheila for a minute, and I'll tell you why, Sheila. But that village is so important because there's a difference between not leaving the dog. I know, look at Stephanie's cute dog. I just saw that too. I was so distracted, but it was adorable. So
that's okay. I am
too. But there's a difference between saying I can, create this village, but once every other day, this dog is left alone for 4 hours, versus we're going to create a village that manages this dog's alone time until this dog is able, until she's able to handle her alone time. So if right now she can handle, 30 minutes or 10 minutes or 1 minute, that is all she's going to be able to endure. And I know that sounds overwhelming, but I do also realize that within volunteer and foster network and reaching out to the community, and right now the community is so on board too with helping with foster and walking and everything else, that we have an opportunity to take advantage of that. But the reason I was going to say, throwing it back to Sheila, is Sheila, I think from a medication standpoint, there are things that I don't know if you have looked at this for.
Yes, she's on all of it.
Well, she's not on all of it because there's more stuff we can do. So
she's on some of it.
Yeah, she's on some of it. So that's where, so definitely agree with what Malena is saying, and that we need a bigger village so that she's not having any alone time if she's not comfortable with it. And the fact that she's protesting the next time tells us that she's uncomfortable. So we don't want to be seeing that behavior. So for her, and I know Tutu, and I love Tutu. She's just the cutest girl and the sweetest girl, as so many of our separation anxiety dogs are, and all of our dogs are. But it's medication and finding that right combination of medication that can lower her overall anxiety level so that we can be successful. And I have never had a dog where I'm unable to find some right combination. It might be 4 medications, but I've never had a situation where we can't, so we just need to keep working on that with Tutu. And we are running out of time here, and I think I'm going to, thanks for that question, Hillary. It was a really good one. And other people had questions too. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to them. But I want to end with one last question for you, Malena, and that's with all of these dogs, I don't know how many dogs with separation anxiety and people you've helped over the years, what percentage of dogs, if you had to estimate, would you say that if you're doing everything right, so they're following the plans that you've given and they're on a plan where they're able to get input and feedback, and you have a veterinarian involved so that the dog is on the correct combination of medication, what percentage of dogs would you say you cannot help and the separation anxiety remains?
So I both love and hate this question. I'm not going to lie. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I think I would have answered this question a little bit differently. The reason currently that I believe that we have dogs that we have not been able to help, for whatever percentage that is, which is not that high, to be honest with you, is that there is a limited bandwidth of resources for any guardian. Okay. And that resource, I'm not just talking financial, there's emotional bandwidth and there's time availability bandwidth. And so most of the people, the guardians that come to us, say, I can do this for a month or two or whatever, or 3 or 4 or 6 or whatever. But most everybody has a stopping point. And we'll end with this. I think I had a case. This is several years ago now, that changed the trajectory of how I think. This client worked with me for several months, and then we made progress, and then we had a regression, and we made progress, and we had a regression, and we made progress, we had a regression. Went to a VB, and the veterinary behaviorist, prescribed a variety of things, and we made some additional progress. And then the VB said, I want you to go to a different VB. And so we did everything. We did everything. And one day, and this was about a year, and I'm not saying this to discourage people. I'm saying this actually to be inspirational, so you'll hopefully get the concept of the story at the end. About a year into this, I thought to myself, wow, we've seen these 2 veterinary behaviorists. We've done all of these exercises. We've done, all of these day-to-day trainings. I don't know. This is probably one of those clients that it's a dog that just is, not retractable, we're just not going to make progress. And so I was about to meet with a client on Zoom like this, and I was about to say, I've done everything that I know how to do. And I got onto this online consult, and the client said, hold on. Before we start tonight, I want to say something, and I want to ask you something. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure, of course. And she said, my dog Holly, will never be euthanized. She will never be relinquished. She will never, ever suffer a day in her life. If I never have to leave her alone, I will never do so. And I was like, okay. And she said, so Malena, I want to ask you one question. Would you ever give up on us? I'm not going to lie. I inhaled a breath, oh my gosh, I was about to tell them that I was not able to help them. And yeah, I mean, it even makes me sort of cry to this day. And I said, well, as I'm scrambling for my words, I was like, you know what? I know that you would never give up on her. And so I'm happy to continue training. And she said, because what would it hurt? What would it hurt if we kept doing day-to-day training? And I said, it would hurt nothing. And so we went to the additional VB, and we researched more meds, and we did more training. And literally 2 years to the day, that dog graduated with a 5-hour absence with sleeping, no problem. And the reason that case affected me so much is that I realized it's okay that everybody has their individual financial, emotional, and time bandwidth. But I don't know that there are not dogs that could not still improve if we kept at it. So I don't want to give anybody false hope. I certainly don't want to provide that to anybody, but there are very few dogs that have not gotten through their separation anxiety when people have continued in their protocol. But sometimes that takes a long time.
Well, thank you for that. That's a very powerful story. And that's certainly been my experience as well, is that if you have someone dedicated and you have people on the other side of the coin who are going to keep helping and get that person to the resources, that it's very rare that we fail. The challenge is in those resources and making sure that we're using the right ones and applying them appropriately. So thank you so much. I don't know if I'm going to thank you for making me cry right at the end of that, but it's a very, very nice story.
I'm so sorry.
No, very heartwarming story. But thank you, everyone, so much for joining us tonight. And thank you so much for being our guest. And everyone have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It was
All right.
really a
Thank
pleasure
you.
being here.